"You don't belong here, and quite frankly, you're making the other passengers uncomfortable." Those were the words that ruined Stephanie's career forever. She thought she was just kicking a hood rat out of first class. She thought her badge gave her the power of a god. She even called the police to drag a 19-year-old girl off the plane in handcuffs for the theft of services. But Stephanie didn't check the passenger manifest, and she certainly didn't know that the girl she was humiliating wasn't just a passenger. She was the daughter of the man who owned the entire airline, and he was just pulling up to the gate. The heavy glass doors of JFK International Airport slid open, letting in a gust of humid July air. But inside Terminal 4, the atmosphere was clinically cold. Maya Washington adjusted the strap of her canvas backpack. She was exhausted. It had been a grueling semester at Stanford, followed by a 6-week internship in Seoul that had tested every ounce of her patience. Now, all she wanted was to get home to Los Angeles, sleep in her own bed, and maybe eat something that wasn't packaged in plastic. She looked down at her attire: oversized grey sweatpants, a faded Stanford hoodie with a coffee stain on the cuff, and worn-out sneakers. She looked like a tired college student. She definitely didn't look like money. But that was how Maya preferred it. She hated the pretension that came with her family name. She just wanted to be Maya. Flight 402 to Los Angeles, now boarding first class and Diamond Medallion members. The intercom crackled. Maya sighed, rubbing her eyes. She pulled her phone out, the digital boarding pass glowing on the screen. Seat 1A, first class. She approached the priority lane. The line was short, mostly older businessmen in charcoal suits and women with Louis Vuitton carry-ons who radiated a scent of expensive perfume and entitlement. Maya stepped in, behind a man barking into his Bluetooth earpiece about liquidating assets. As she reached the podium, the gate agent, a young man named Kevin, who looked like he'd been working a double shift, barely glanced up. Maya scanned her phone. The machine let out a cheerful beep, and a green light flashed. "Have a nice flight," Kevin mumbled, already looking past her. Maya walked down the jet bridge, the hollow thud of her sneakers echoing against the metal floor. She loved this part, the transition between the chaos of the ground and the peace of the air. But that peace was about to be shattered. She stepped onto the plane. The air inside was cool and smelled faintly of leather and sanitized wipes. Standing at the entrance to the cabin was the lead flight attendant. Her name tag read Stephanie. She was tall, with hair sprayed into a helmet of blonde perfection and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her uniform was crisp, but her posture was rigid, like a coiled snake. "Welcome aboard," Stephanie said to the man in front of Maya, beaming with practiced warmth. "Mr. Henderson, so good to see you again. Can I take your coat?" "Thanks, Steph," the man grunted, brushing past her. Then Stephanie turned to Maya. The smile vanished instantly. Her eyes raked over Maya's hoodie, the messy bun, the canvas backpack. It was a look of pure, unfiltered judgment. "Economy is to the right, sweetie," Stephanie said, her voice dripping with condescension. She pointed toward the back of the plane without even checking Maya's boarding pass. "Row 30 and back. Overhead bins are likely full, so you might have to check that bag." Maya paused. She was used to this. It happened at upscale restaurants, at boutiques, even at her own university library. "Actually," Maya said, keeping her voice polite and level, "I'm in first class." She held up her phone to show the screen. Stephanie didn't even look at the digital ticket. She let out a short, sharp laugh, a sound meant to belittle. "Honey, please. We're trying to board efficiently. Don't hold up the line trying to play games. If you want to sneak a peek at the big seats, do it on Google. Economy. Now." Behind Maya, A woman with a designer poodle in a carrier cleared her throat loudly. "Excuse me, some of us actually paid for our seats. Can we move this along?" Maya felt the heat rising in her cheeks. It wasn't embarrassment. It was frustration. "I'm not playing games," Maya said, stepping forward and thrusting the phone closer to Stephanie's face. "Seat 1A. Scan it if you don't believe me." Stephanie's eyes narrowed. She snatched the phone from Maya's hand, her manicured nails clicking aggressively against the screen. She looked at the ticket. She looked at the date. She looked at the name. M. Kalura, Washington. For a split second, Maya saw a flicker of confusion in Stephanie's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by suspicion. "Screenshots can be faked," Stephanie sneered, shoving the phone back at Maya. "I've seen it a dozen times. Kids like you buy a Photoshop app and think you can scam your way into a $5,000 seat. It's pathetic." "It's not a screenshot," Maya said, her voice hardening. "It's the Airline app. It's live." "I'm going to ask you once," Stephanie said, stepping closer, invading Maya's personal space. The scent of cheap hairspray was overwhelming. "Go to your assigned seat in the back, or I will have you removed from this flight. Do not test me today." Maya stared at her. She knew she could make a scene. She could scream. She could demand the captain. But her father had always taught her, quiet power is the most dangerous kind. "Fine," Maya said softly. "Check the manifest." "I don't have time to check the manifest for every confused teenager," Stephanie snapped. "Move." Maya didn't move toward economy. She stepped sideways, maneuvering around Stephanie, and walked straight into the first-class cabin. She found seat Iruna A, a massive, plush leather recliner with a dedicated entertainment screen and a welcome kit. She threw her backpack into the overhead bin and sat down, buckling the seatbelt with a defiant click. The silence in the first-class cabin was deafening. Every head turned. Mr. Henderson, the businessman from earlier, peered over his glasses. The lady with the poodle gasped audibly. Stephanie stormed down the aisle, her heels striking the floor like gunshots. Her face was flushed a splotchy red. She loomed over Maya, her hands on her hips. "You have 5 seconds," Stephanie hissed, low enough so the back of the plane couldn't hear, but loud enough to humiliate Maya in front of the wealthy elite. "Get out of that seat, or I am calling security." Maya pulled her noise-cancelling headphones out of her bag. She looked Stephanie dead in the eye. "I suggest you check that manifest, Stephanie. Before you make a mistake you can't fix." Then she put the headphones on and closed her eyes. The headphones were on, but no music was playing. Maya needed to hear everything. She heard the heavy, exasperated breath Stephanie exhaled, a sound of pure rage. She heard the rustle of fabric as Stephanie leaned in close, practically shouting over the headset. "You think you're cute?" Stephanie's voice vibrated with malice. "You think because you're young and urban that you can just take what isn't yours? This isn't a subway car. This is Trans-Global Airlines." Maya didn't open her eyes. She kept her hands folded in her lap, breathing deeply. "Don't engage," she told herself. "Let her dig the hole." Stephanie stormed off toward the galley, presumably to check the manifest or call for backup. Maya opened one eye. The other passengers were staring at her with a mixture of curiosity and disgust. "Unbelievable," muttered a man across the aisle in seat 1B. He was young, maybe late 20s, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's cars and a watch that caught the cabin lights. He had the slicked-back hair and arrogant jawline of someone who had never heard the word no. This was Preston. "Excuse me." Preston leaned across the aisle, tapping on Maya's armrest. "Hey, Sleeping Beauty." Maya slid one ear cup back. "Yes?" "You know you're holding us up, right?" Preston said, swirling a glass of pre-departure scotch. "We miss our slot on the runway because you're playing musical chairs, and I miss a meeting in LA. And if I miss that meeting, I lose money. I don't like losing money." "I'm in my assigned seat," Maya said calmly. "The flight attendant is mistaken." Preston laughed. It was a dry, cruel sound. "Mistaken? Look at you. Then look at this seat. One of these things is not like the other. Why don't you just go back to row 40 where you belong and let the adults handle business?" "Sir, I paid for this ticket," Maya lied. Technically her father paid for it, or rather, the company did. But the sentiment stood. "With whose credit card?" Preston shot back, smirking. "Daddy's? Or did you lift it from someone's purse in the terminal?" Before Maya could respond, Stephanie returned. She wasn't alone. She had brought the co-pilot, a stern-looking man named Captain Miller, who looked like he just wanted to get the flight over with. "That's her." Stephanie pointed a long, manicured finger at Maya. "She refused to show a valid boarding pass. She pushed past me, and she's currently trespassing in a premium cabin seat. She's belligerent, Captain." Captain Miller sighed. He looked tired. He looked at Maya, seeing only the hoodie and the sweatpants. He made a quick calculation. Flight attendant versus scruffy teenager. In the airline hierarchy, he had to back his crew. "Miss," the captain said, his voice authoritative but not shouting, "I need to see your boarding pass." Maya unlocked her phone and held it up again. "Seat 1A, M. Washington." The captain leaned in, squinting. He looked at the screen, then at Stephanie. "It says 1A, Stephanie." Stephanie's face turned a shade of purple. "It's fake. Look at the font, Captain. It's slightly off. And look at the name. Washington? Like she's related to the founders?" "Please." She probably hacked the app or just photoshopped it. "I checked the manifest, and seat 1A is reserved for a VIP corporate transfer." "Does she look like a corporate transfer to you?" She gestured wildly at Maya's attire. The captain hesitated. He looked at Preston, who was shaking his head. "She's been rude since she sat down, Captain. Accused me of harassment when I asked her nicely to move. Just get her off so we can fly." That lie stung. Maya sat up straighter. "I never spoke to him until he insulted me." "She's lying," Stephanie interjected quickly. "She's been aggressive since the gate. I don't feel safe flying with her in the cabin. As the lead attendant, I have the authority to remove a passenger who threatens the safety or comfort of the crew. She goes, or I don't fly." This was the ultimatum. Stephanie was playing her ace card. If the crew walked off, the flight would be cancelled. The airline would lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. The captain rubbed his temples. He didn't have time to call IT and verify the ticket code. He had a departure window to hit. "Miss," the captain said, his voice harder now, "you need to grab your bag and follow Stephanie off the plane. We can sort this out at the gate counter." "If I get off this plane," Maya said, her voice trembling slightly with suppressed rage, "I'm not getting back on, and you are going to have a very big problem." "The only problem I have is a brat in seat 1A, Stephanie snapped. She reached into the overhead bin and yanked Maya's backpack out, throwing it into the aisle. It landed with a heavy thud. "Get out! That is my personal property," Maya yelled, finally breaking her composure. "And this is my aircraft," Stephanie shouted back. "You are disrupting a federal flight. That is a felony." Maya unbuckled her seatbelt. She stood up. She was tall, nearly as tall as Stephanie. She looked around the cabin. Every pair of eyes was fixed on her. Some were filming with their phones. Preston was grinning, enjoying the show. The lady with the poodle looked scandalized. "I'll leave," Maya said, her voice icy. "But not because you told me to, because I refuse to fly with a crew this incompetent." "Incompetent?" Stephanie laughed. Honey, I've been flying for 20 years. I know a fraud when I see one. Now move. Maya stepped into the aisle and bent down to pick up her bag. As she did, Stephanie leaned in and whispered, "Go back to the ghetto, princess. First class is for people who matter." Maya froze. The air left her lungs. That wasn't just rude. It was hate, pure, concentrated hate. Maya straightened up. She didn't scream. She didn't hit her. She pulled her phone out and dialed a number. "Put the phone away," Stephanie shrieked. "No calls on the plane." Maya ignored her. She pressed the contact labeled Dad. Personal. It rang once. Twice. "Hey, sweetheart," a deep, warm voice answered. "You settled in? I saw the flight is pushing back in 10. "Dad," Maya said, her voice breaking just enough to be audible to everyone in the silence of the cabin. "I'm being removed from the flight." "What?" The voice on the other end sharpened instantly. "Why? Is there a mechanical issue?" "No," Maya said, staring directly at Stephanie. "The lead flight attendant, Stephanie. She threw my bag in the aisle. She called me a fraud, and she just told me to go back to the ghetto." There was a silence on the other end of the line, a terrifying, heavy silence. "Dad?" "Maya," her father said, his voice incredibly calm, which was always a bad sign for whoever had crossed him. "Are you safe?" "For now. The captain is kicking me off." "Hand the phone to the captain," her father ordered. Maya held the phone out to Captain Miller. "He wants to talk to you." Stephanie slapped Maya's hand away before the captain could take it. The phone skittered across the floor, sliding under Preston's seat. "That's it!" Stephanie screamed. "Assault! She just tried to hit me! Captain, did you see that? She swung at me!" It was a blatant lie. Maya had merely extended her arm, but Stephanie was doubling down. She turned to the open boarding door. "Agent, call the police! I want this passenger arrested for assault on a flight crew member." Preston kicked the phone further back with his heel, hiding it. "I saw it," Preston lied loudly. She tried to smack the phone into Stephanie's face. Vicious. Maya looked around, stunned. They were teaming up. The narrative was being rewritten in real time. She was alone, her phone was out of reach, and the police were coming. "You have made a grave mistake," Maya whispered, looking at Stephanie. "The only mistake," Stephanie gloated, crossing her arms, "was thinking you could sit with us. Now wait right there for the cuffs." The sound of heavy boots came thundering down the jet bridge. 2 Port Authority officers squeezed through the narrow aircraft door, their radios crackling with static. The lead officer, a burly man with a buzz cut and a name tag reading Officer Kowalski, looked around the first-class cabin with tired, cynical eyes. He saw the crying baby in row 3, the impatient businessmen checking their watches, and finally, the tableau in the aisle. Stephanie, looking flushed and distressed, and Maya, standing tall but cornered near row 1. "What's the problem here?" Kowalski grunted, his hand resting instinctively near his belt. Stephanie immediately dissolved into a performance worthy of an Academy Award. She let her shoulders slump, bringing a trembling hand to her chest. "Officer, thank God you're here," she gasped, her voice breathless. "This passenger, she's out of control. She refused to go to her assigned seat. She became verbally abusive. And when I tried to de-escalate the situation, she took a swing at me." Kowalski's eyes snapped to Maya. He didn't see a Stanford student or a CEO's daughter. He saw a suspect. He saw the hoodie. He saw the messy hair. And he saw the defiance in her posture. "Is this true?" Kowalski asked Maya, stepping into her personal space. "No," Maya said firmly. "It is a complete lie. I have a first-class ticket. She refused to look at it. I called my father, and she slapped the phone out of my hand. That man there," she pointed to where Preston was sitting, Kicked my phone under the seat to hide the evidence. Kowalski looked at Preston. Preston looked up from his scotch, feigning shock. "Officer," Preston said smoothly, using his most respectable citizen voice. "I don't know this girl, but I saw the whole thing. She was screaming at the flight attendant from the moment she boarded. And yeah, she definitely tried to hit her. The attendant was just protecting herself." "He's lying!" Maya shouted, looking frantically around the cabin. "Did anyone else see? Please, someone tell the truth." The cabin was silent. The lady with the poodle looked out the window. Mr. Henderson pretended to read a magazine. No one wanted to get involved. No one wanted to delay the flight further. It was easier to let the troublemaker take the fall. "Ma'am, turn around," Kowalski ordered, pulling a pair of zip ties from his belt. He didn't use metal cuffs. He used the thick plastic restraints meant for unruly drunks. "I am not turning around," Maya said, her voice shaking. "I have done nothing wrong. Check the manifest. Just ask the pilot to check the computer." "We can talk about the computer at the station," Kowalski said. He grabbed Maya's wrist, twisting it behind her back with unnecessary force. "Ow, you're hurting me!" Maya cried out. "Stop resisting!" Kowalski barked, putting his weight against her shoulder to force her down. "Officer Mendez, grab her other arm." The second officer, younger and looking slightly uncomfortable, stepped in and grabbed Maya's left arm. They wrenched her hands together behind her back. The sound of the heavy plastic zip tie tightening, zip, was sickeningly loud in the quiet cabin. Stephanie stood back, smoothing her skirt, a small, victorious smirk playing on her lips as she watched Maya wince in pain. "Get her off my plane," Stephanie said coldly. "And I want to press charges, assault and battery, and interference with the flight crew." "Understood," Kowalski said. He shoved Maya forward. "Move." Maya stumbled. Tears of frustration finally spilled over, hot and stinging. This was the nightmare she had always feared. It didn't matter that she had a 4.0 GPA. It didn't matter that she spoke 3 languages. It didn't matter that her father owned the company. In this moment, she was just a body to be removed. As they marched her down the aisle, the humiliation was absolute. Every passenger in economy craned their necks to see. "Is that her? Did she have a bomb?" someone whispered. "Probably drunk," another muttered. "Takes all kinds," said a woman, shaking her head. Maya kept her head up, staring straight ahead, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break down completely. But as she passed row 1, she locked eyes with Preston one last time. Preston raised his glass in a mock toast. "Bon voyage," he mouthed. Kowalski shoved her through the door and onto the jet bridge. The humid air of the tunnel hit her face. "You made a big mistake, kid," Kowalski grunted as they walked her up the incline toward the terminal. "Assaulting a flight attendant is a federal offense. You're looking at real jail time." "I didn't do it," Maya whispered, her voice hoarse. My phone is still on the plane. I need my phone." "Forget the phone," Mendez said, though his voice was softer than his partner's. "You'll get your one call at the holding cell." Back on the plane, Stephanie let out a dramatic sigh of relief. She picked up the intercom handset. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice regaining that sickly sweet customer service tone. "We apologize for the delay. We have removed a security threat from the aircraft. We will be closing the cabin doors shortly and proceeding to Los Angeles. Thank you for choosing Trans-Global." A scattering of applause broke out in the cabin. The passengers were happy. The problem was gone. They could go back to their drinks and movies. Stephanie walked past seat 1A. She saw the backpack in the aisle where she had thrown it. She kicked it toward the galley, intending to have the ground crew toss it in the trash later. Then she noticed the edge of a phone sticking out from under Preston's seat. She bent down and picked it up. The screen was cracked, but it was still on. It showed an active call screen, though the line had disconnected. The contact name was simply Dad. Personal. Stephanie scoffed. "Daddy can't save you now," she muttered. She switched the phone off and shoved it into her apron pocket. She signaled the gate agent. "Close the door, Kevin. We're out of here." The heavy aircraft door swung shut and locked with a mechanical thud. The seal was airtight. Stephanie felt a surge of power. She had won. 3 miles away, in the back of a chauffeured Maybach SUV, Marcus Washington stared at his phone. The line was dead. He didn't blink. He didn't yell. He sat in a stillness that was far more terrifying than any scream. Marcus was a man who had built an empire from nothing. He had acquired trans-global airlines in a hostile takeover 3 years ago because he was tired of the way other airlines were run. He was known in the boardroom as the silencer, because when he spoke, everyone else stopped breathing. He had heard the last 10 seconds of the call clearly. He heard Maya's voice trembling. He heard the woman, Stephanie, screaming lies. He heard the scuffle, and he heard the distinct sound of the phone hitting the floor. Mr. Washington, his driver, Thomas, looked in the rearview mirror. "We are approaching the private hangar. The jet is prepped for your trip to London." "Cancel the London flight," Marcus said. His voice was low, resonating with a dark gravity. Thomas paused, surprised. "Sir, the board is waiting in London." "Turn the car around," Marcus ordered. "Take me to Terminal 4, main departure gate." "Terminal 4? Sir, that's commercial. Traffic is—" "Thomas," Marcus said, his eyes still fixed on his silent phone. "Get me to Terminal 4. Drive on the tarmac if you have to." Thomas nodded, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. He swung the massive car around, tires screeching, and floored it. Marcus dialed a number on his secure line. It wasn't the customer service line. It was the direct private cell of David Ross, the director of operations for JFK. "Marcus," David answered on the first ring, sounding surprised. "I thought you were wheels up for the UK. Do you need something?" "Flight 402 to Los Angeles," Marcus said. "What is its status?" There was the sound of typing on the other end. "Flight 402. Looks like they just closed the doors. Pushing back from the gate in 2 minutes. Why?" "Stop it," Marcus said. "Excuse me?" "Stop the plane, David. Do not let it push back. Tell the tower to deny taxi clearance. If it moves 1 inch, you're fired." There was a stunned silence on the line. "Marcus, I can't just ground a fully loaded Boeing 787 without a cause. The FAA will be all over us. Is there a mechanical failure? A bomb threat?" "There is a failure," Marcus said, adjusting his cufflinks. "A failure of leadership. My daughter was just assaulted by the crew and dragged off that plane by police." "Oh my God," David breathed. "Your daughter? Maya? She was on that flight?" "She was," Marcus corrected. "Now she is somewhere in the terminal, likely in custody, while the woman who assaulted her is preparing to serve drinks. I want that plane held at the gate. I want the jet bridge reconnected. And I want the stairs lowered." "I'm on it," David said, his voice snapping into crisis mode. "I'm calling the tower now. Where are you?" "I'm 3 minutes out," Marcus said. "Meet me at gate B12. "And David?" "Yes, sir?" "Bring the airport police chief. I want him personally present to explain why his officers put handcuffs on my child." Marcus hung up. He looked out the window as the terminal buildings blurred past. He felt a cold rage tightening in his chest. He had raised Maya to be humble. He made her fly commercial so she would understand the value of $1 and stay grounded. He had told her to never use his name to get ahead. That ends today, he thought. He unlocked his iPad and pulled up the internal HR database for Trans-Global Airlines. He typed in the flight number, 402. The crew manifest populated instantly. Lead flight attendant, Stephanie Miller. Employee ID, 890442. 10 years of service. 3 prior complaints for attitude, all dismissed by the union. Captain, John Miller. Passenger manifest. He scrolled down to seat 1A. It showed, cancelled, no show. Marcus's jaw tightened. They hadn't just kicked her off. They had erased her from the system to cover their tracks. They were trying to make it look like she never boarded. The SUV screeched to a halt at the VIP curb of Terminal 4. Before Thomas could open the door, Marcus was out. He didn't have luggage. He only had his phone and the terrifying aura of a man on a warpath. He strode through the sliding doors. He was wearing a bespoke Italian suit that cost more than Stephanie made in 3 months. He moved through the crowd like a shark parting a school of fish. People stepped out of his way without knowing why. They just sensed the energy. David Ross was waiting at the TSA checkpoint, looking pale. Standing next to him was a confused-looking TSA supervisor. "Mr. Washington," David said, rushing forward. "I've halted the pushback. The pilot is furious. He's demanding an explanation." "He'll get one," Marcus said, not breaking stride. He walked straight toward the security line. "Sir, you need a boarding pass," the TSA agent started to say, stepping in front of him. Marcus didn't stop. David Ross shoved his badge at the agent. "He's the owner of the airline. Let him through. Override it." The agent scrambled out of the way. Marcus walked through the metal detector. It beeped, his watch, but he kept walking. No one dared to tell him to go back. "Where is she?" Marcus asked David as they power-walked toward gate B12. "I tracked the police radio," David said, struggling to keep up with Marcus's long strides. "They took her to the substation near the baggage claim holding area. But Marcus, the plane. The passengers are getting restless. The captain is threatening to file a union grievance for the delay." Marcus stopped. They had reached the large glass windows overlooking gate B12. Below them, the massive trans-global jet was sitting motionless. The jet bridge had been pulled back a few feet, but the tug truck was idling. Marcus looked at the plane. He imagined Stephanie inside, probably popping champagne in the galley, laughing about the hood rat she had evicted. "Let the captain file his grievance," Marcus said softly. "Open the door, David." The gate door?" "Open it." "I'm going onto the tarmac." "Marcus, that's a restricted zone. We need high-visibility vests. We need—" Marcus turned to David. His eyes were like shattered glass. "My daughter is sitting in a cell because of your employees. Open the door." David swallowed hard. He swiped his security card at the door, leading to the jet bridge stairs. The lock clicked green. Marcus pushed the door open and stepped out into the roar of the airport. The smell of jet fuel was overpowering. He walked down the metal stairs to the tarmac, his dress shoes clicking on the concrete. He walked straight toward the nose gear of the massive Boeing 737. Up in the cockpit, Captain Miller looked down. He saw a lone man in a suit standing on the tarmac, blocking the path of the plane. He squinted. "Who is that idiot?" The captain grumbled to his co-pilot. "Tower, we have a pedestrian on the ramp blocking pushback. Send security." "Negative, Flight 402, the tower replied, their voice sounding surprisingly shaky. "Ground control has ordered you to hold position. Do not, I repeat, do not start engines." The captain looked down again. The man in the suit wasn't moving. He was just standing there, looking up at the cockpit, his hands in his pockets. Then, a black SUV with flashing lights raced across the tarmac and screeched to a halt next to the man. It wasn't the police. It was the airport director's vehicle, The man in the suit didn't get in the car. Instead, the airport director jumped out and handed the man a megaphone. Marcus took the megaphone. He didn't point it at the cockpit. He pointed it at the fuselage. He waited. Inside the cabin, Stephanie was in the galley, confused. "Why aren't we moving?" she snapped at the junior attendant. "Go ask the captain." Suddenly, the heavy door of the plane, which had been sealed shut, was knocked on from the outside. Thud, thud, thud. It was the distinct sound of the jet bridge reconnecting. "What is going on?" Stephanie huffed. She marched to the door. If that brat found a way to come back. She looked through the peephole. It wasn't the gate agent, Kevin. Standing on the other side of the glass porthole was David Ross, the director of operations, and behind him, looking like the angel of death in a Brioni suit, was a man Stephanie vaguely recognized from the corporate newsletters she usually threw in the trash. The lock cycled. The door opened. Marcus Washington stepped onto the plane. The cabin fell silent. The air pressure seemed to drop. Stephanie's mouth opened, but no words came out. Marcus didn't look at the passengers. He looked directly at Stephanie. "I believe," Marcus said, his voice calm and terrifyingly polite. "You have something of mine." The silence in the first-class cabin was absolute. It was the kind of silence usually reserved for funerals or the moments before a car crash. Stephanie stared at Marcus. Her brain was misfiring. She saw the expensive suit, the way David Ross, her boss's boss's boss, was standing deferentially behind him, and the sheer, suffocating aura of authority this man projected. But she couldn't reconcile it with the girl she had just thrown off the plane in sweatpants. Excuse me," Stephanie stammered, her customer service mask slipping. "Sir, you need to return to the terminal. You cannot board an aircraft once the doors have—" "I didn't ask about the doors," Marcus cut her off. His voice wasn't loud. It was a low rumble, like distant thunder. He took one step closer, invading her personal space, just as she had done to Maya. "I asked about the phone. My daughter was on a call with me when you slapped it out of her hand. Where is it?" Stephanie's heart hammered against her ribs. "Daughter?" I don't know what you're talking about," she lied, her eyes darting nervously to the side. "The passenger was removed by police for being disruptive. I don't know anything about a phone." "Liar," Marcus said. He didn't shout it. He stated it like a fact on a balance sheet. "Hey, buddy," Preston in seat 1B piped up, swirling his scotch again. He was annoyed by the delay and oblivious to the danger he was in. "Look, we get it. Dramatic entry, but we're trying to get to LA. Why don't you take it up with customer service and let us fly?" Marcus turned his head slowly to look at Preston. He looked at the slicked-back hair, the expensive watch, the arrogant slouch. "Preston Sterling," Marcus said. Preston froze. The glass stopped halfway to his mouth. "How do you know my name?" "I know your father, Richard," Marcus said coldly. "Sterling Capital manages a small portion of my employee pension fund. I was actually scheduled to have dinner with Richard in London tomorrow." Marcus paused, letting the words hang in the air. "I wonder how Richard will feel when I tell him I'm pulling the entire trans-global portfolio from his firm because his son decided to lie to the police to help harass a 19-year-old girl." Preston's face went pale. The arrogance evaporated instantly. "Wait, hold on. I didn't lie. I saw—" "You saw nothing," Marcus snapped. "You saw a young black woman in a hoodie and assumed she didn't belong. So you helped this employee," he gestured to Stephanie without looking at her, "create a narrative to remove her." Marcus turned back to Stephanie. She was trembling now. She had put the pieces together. The name on the ticket. Washington. The man in the suit. The power. You checked the manifest, Marcus said, stepping closer. You saw the name Washington, and you thought, what a coincidence. You didn't think, maybe this is the daughter of the man who signs my paychecks. Stephanie gasped. The blood drained from her face so fast she looked like a ghost. Mr. Washington? I didn't know. She didn't say. She was wearing sweatpants. She was wearing clothes, Marcus corrected. Comfortable clothes for a 6-hour flight. Since when does trans-global airlines have a dress code for paying customers? Since when does a hoodie justify assault? I didn't assault her, Stephanie cried, panic rising in her voice. She attacked me. Ask the captain. Captain Miller emerged from the cockpit, looking furious. He saw the open door, the staircase, and the stranger in his cabin. Who the hell are you? The captain barked. Get off my flight deck immediately, or I'm having you arrested. David Ross stepped out from behind Marcus. Captain Miller, stand down, David ordered sharply. David? The captain blinked. What is going on? This man, David said, his voice shaking slightly, is Marcus Washington. He owns the airline, John. The captain stopped dead. He looked at Marcus. He looked at the pin on Marcus's lapel, the gold trans-global logo that only the board of directors wore. Mr. Washington, the captain stammered, pulling his hat off. I had no idea. The passenger, the girl, she was uncooperative. Stephanie told me she was a threat. And you blindly believed her, Marcus said. You didn't check the ticket. You didn't listen to the passenger. You let a paying customer, my child, be dragged off your ship in zip ties because it was inconvenient to ask questions. I followed protocol, the captain said weakly. No, Marcus said. You followed prejudice, and now you are going to fix it. Marcus turned back to Stephanie. She was backing away, cornered against the galley cart. The phone, Marcus repeated. Last chance. Stephanie's hand went involuntarily to her apron pocket. She realized the gesture too late. Marcus held out his hand. Trembling, Stephanie reached into her pocket and pulled out Maya's phone. The screen was cracked. I found it, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I was going to turn it into lost and found. You hid it, Marcus said, taking the phone. He looked at the cracked screen. Destruction of private property, filing a false police report, theft. He handed the phone to David Ross. Unlock it. Maya's passcode is her birthday, 0704. David unlocked the phone. Check the voice memos, Marcus said. Maya has been recording her interactions with aggressive people since she was 12. It's a habit I taught her. David tapped the screen. He turned the volume up to the maximum. A tinny recording began to play. The entire cabin could hear it. Stephanie's voice. Recording. Go back to the ghetto, princess. First class is for people who matter. Maya's voice. I never spoke to him until he insulted me. Stephanie's voice. That's it. Assault. She just tried to hit me. Captain, did you see that? She swung at me. The recording ended. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bone. The lady with the poodle put her hand over her mouth. Mr. Henderson looked down at his shoes. Preston closed his eyes, knowing he was doomed. Stephanie stood frozen. The audio proof of her racism and her lies was echoing in the air. That's out of context, Stephanie whispered, tears streaming down her face now. I was stressed. We were running late. I didn't mean it like that. You meant every word, Marcus said softly. You looked at my daughter and decided she was less than human, and you used the police as your personal weapon to enforce that belief. Marcus turned to David. Call the police chief. Tell him to bring the suspect back to the aircraft. I want the criminal returned to the scene of the crime. Sir, David said, They're already processing her at the station. I don't care if they are booking her for murder, Marcus said. Bring her back, now. 10 minutes later, the flashing lights of a police cruiser reflected against the fuselage of the plane. Inside the cabin, no one had moved. The air conditioning hummed, but the passengers were sweating. They were hostages to the drama now. Marcus stood at the front of the aisle, blocking the exit, waiting. Stephanie was sobbing quietly in the galley jump seat. Captain Miller was standing awkwardly by the cockpit door, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. Then, footsteps on the metal stairs. Officer Kowalski and Officer Mendez appeared at the door. Between them, head bowed, was Maya. Her hands were still zip-tied behind her back. She looked small, defeated, and exhausted. Kowalski looked annoyed. We were told to bring the suspect back for identification. Look, we already have the statements from the flight crew. This is highly irregular. Kowalski didn't see Marcus at first. He just saw David Ross. Uncuff her, a deep voice commanded from the shadows of the galley. Kowalski squinted. Marcus stepped into the light. Excuse me? Kowalski bristled. She's in custody. Who are you? I am her father, Marcus said. And I am the man who is going to sue your department for unlawful arrest if you don't cut those ties off her wrists in the next 5 seconds. Kowalski scoffed. Listen, pal. Your daughter assaulted a flight attendant. We have witnesses. You have liars, Marcus said. David, play the tape. David Ross hit play on the phone again. Stephanie's voice. Go back to the ghetto, princess. Followed by the sound of the fabricated assault accusation. Kowalski's face changed. He looked at Stephanie, who was burying her face in her hands. He looked at Maya, who was looking up at him with tear-filled eyes. He realized, with a sinking feeling in his gut, that he had been played. He had been used as a muscle for a petty tyrant. Cut them off, Kowalski said to Mendez, his voice losing its edge. Mendez pulled out a pair of cutters and snipped the thick plastic. Maya's arms fell to her sides. She rubbed her wrists, which were red and welting. Dad, she breathed, seeing him. She didn't run to him. She just stood there, trying to regain her dignity. Marcus walked over to her. He didn't hug her immediately. He took her hands and inspected the red marks on her wrists. He gently touched the bruise forming on her shoulder where Kowalski had shoved her. Then he turned to the cabin. My daughter, Marcus said, his voice projecting to the back of the plane, worked for 6 weeks in a rural clinic in Seoul. She is a straight-A student at Stanford. She volunteers at a legal defense fund for the wrongly accused. She has never stolen a thing in her life. She was sitting in seat 1A because she earned the right to rest. He looked at the passengers. How many of you sat there and watched a 19-year-old girl get bullied? No one answered. How many of you saw her hit this woman? Marcus pointed at Stephanie. Silence. You, Marcus pointed at Preston. You told the police she hit her. Do you want to repeat that statement now, with my lawyers listening? Preston shook his head vigorously. I might have been mistaken. From my angle, it was hard to tell. You lied, Marcus said. Because it was easier to side with the uniform than the girl in the hoodie. Marcus turned to Officer Kowalski. Officer, you arrested my daughter for assault based on a lie. Now, I would like to report a crime. Kowalski looked nervous. What crime, sir? False imprisonment, Marcus said. Filing a false police report and discrimination in a place of public accommodation. He pointed a finger at Stephanie. I want her arrested, Stephanie shrieked. You can't do that. I was doing my job. Your job, Marcus said, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper, was to ensure the safety and comfort of the passengers. Instead, You weaponized your authority to humiliate a child because you didn't like her face. You are fired, Stephanie, effective immediately. You will not fly for Transglobal or any airline ever again. I will personally make sure your certification is revoked. Stephanie looked at the captain. Captain, do something. He can't just fire me on the plane. Captain Miller looked at Marcus, then at Stephanie. He saw the recording on the phone. He saw the bruises on Maya's wrists. You lied to me, Stephanie, the captain said, his voice cold. You compromised the safety of this flight. You're on your own. Stephanie gasped. Officer, Marcus said, remove this woman from my aircraft. She is trespassing. Kowalski hesitated only for a second. The evidence was audio clear. He had been made to look like a fool, and cops hate being made to look like fools. He turned to Stephanie. Ma'am, grab your bag, Kowalski said, reaching for his handcuffs, the real metal ones this time. No, you can't, Stephanie screamed as Mendez grabbed her arm. I have seniority. I have rights. You can't arrest me. You have the right to remain silent, Kowalski said, snapping the cuffs on her wrists. The metallic click-click was the sweetest sound Maya had ever heard. As they dragged a sobbing, screaming Stephanie down the aisle. The exact same walk of shame she had forced Maya to take. The passengers watched in stunned silence. But this time, as Stephanie passed, no one looked away. They watched the karma hit. When they reached the door, Stephanie looked back at Marcus. You're ruining my life, she screamed. No, Marcus said calmly. You ruined it the moment you decided my daughter didn't belong. The police dragged her out. The cabin was quiet again. Marcus turned to Maya. He finally pulled her into a hug. She buried her face in his expensive suit and sobbed, the adrenaline finally crashing. I got you, he whispered. I got you. He looked over Maya's head at the captain. Captain Miller, Marcus said. Yes, sir? You're suspended pending an investigation into why you allowed this to happen without verifying the facts. Pack your bag. You're off this flight. But, sir, the captain stammered, who will fly the plane? The passengers? We're already delayed. Marcus looked at the passengers. He looked at Preston, at the lady with the poodle, at the businessman. This flight is cancelled, Marcus announced. The cabin erupted in groans and protests. However, Marcus raised his voice, a replacement aircraft will be provided in 2 hours for those who wish to rebook. But for now, everyone off. I need this plane empty. Why? Preston demanded, standing up. This is ridiculous. We paid for these seats. Because, Marcus said, staring Preston down until the man slumped back into his seat. I need to clean the bad energy out of this cabin, and I'm taking my daughter home. On my jet. He grabbed Maya's backpack from the galley where Stephanie had kicked it. He slung it over one shoulder. He put his other arm around Maya. Come on, sweetheart, he said. Let's go. They walked off the plane together, leaving a cabin full of stunned, shamed people behind them. But the story wasn't over. The video was about to go viral. The internet moves faster than any jet. By the time Marcus's private Gulfstream touched down at LAX, the video filmed by the teenager in seat 2B had already amassed 12 million views. The caption was brutal in its simplicity. Flight attendant calls cops on boss's daughter. Watch the instant karma. For Stephanie Miller, the fallout was nuclear. She didn't just lose her job, she became a global pariah. Transglobal Airlines fired her for gross misconduct and violation of the Passenger Bill of Rights before she was even released from police custody. When she tried to fight it through her union, they watched the video of her lying about the assault and immediately dropped her case. But Marcus wasn't done. 2 days later, a process server handed Stephanie a civil lawsuit. Marcus wasn't suing for money. He knew she didn't have any. He was suing for defamation and civil rights violations. The judgment would remain on her permanent record forever, ensuring that no airline, hotel, or customer service agency would ever hire her again. She had abused her power, so Marcus ensured she would never hold power over another human being again. Preston Sterling fared no better. He thought his father's wealth would shield him, but he forgot that his father's wealth depended on clients like Marcus. On Tuesday morning, Richard Sterling stormed into his son's penthouse, throwing a tablet onto the glass coffee table. "You idiot!" Richard roared. "Do you know what Marcus Washington did this morning? He pulled the Trans-Global Pension Fund from our firm. That is a $400 million account, Preston. Gone." "Dad, Shut up!" Richard cut him off. "You perjured yourself to impress a flight attendant? You are a liability. I'm freezing your trust fund and removing you from the board. If you want to eat, get a job." Preston was left standing in his designer suit, realizing that for the first time in his life, he couldn't buy his way out. A week later, at the Washington estate in Malibu, Maya sat on the deck, watching the waves. The bruises on her wrists were fading, but the lesson remained. Marcus sat beside her, sliding a piece of paper across the table. It was a press release. Trans-Global Airlines announces the Maya Washington policy. Mandatory blind review for all passenger removals and a zero-tolerance protocol for discrimination. "Did you have to destroy them, Dad?" Maya asked softly. "Stephanie and Preston?" "I didn't destroy them, Maya," Marcus said, taking her hand. "I just held up a mirror. They destroyed themselves. I just made sure the world saw it, so the next Stephanie thinks twice before she judges a girl in a hoodie." Maya smiled, finally feeling the weight lift off her chest. "Okay, but next time." "Yeah? I'm flying private." Marcus laughed. "Deal." And that is how a simple flight turned into a masterclass in humility. Stephanie and Preston thought their status gave them the right to bully someone they saw as lesser, but they learned the hard way that true power doesn't need to scream. It just needs to show up. What do you think? Was Marcus's revenge too harsh, or was it exactly what they deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching.